So next is Andrea Reyes, Beth Fiteni, and Priscilla Debar, who are going to bring us a panel discussion. Andrea Reyes is the co-founder of Bernadette, in which coordinates fashion mentors, educators, and activists in regards to sustainability. She's a professor teaching a variety of fashion, marketing, international trade, and business development classes at LIM College, Pace University, FIT, and Baruch College. Beth Fiteni is the owner of Green Inside and Out, based in Long Island, New York. Fiteni has worked for over 20 years as a professional environmental advocate on toxins reduction and climate change. And Priscilla Debar is the founder and CEO of FAUBOURG, a curated conscious luxury and ethical fashion online destination for modern individuals. So let's welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Andrea Reyes. Thank you for having us today. I'm actually a FIT alumni. I would like to say I think I may have been here longer than some of you. I started in high school classes, and then I did pattern making, and then I did international trade and marketing, and then I did global fashion management, got my master's. So I think I've been here maybe 15 years. And now I'm teaching here. So I'm teaching in the international trade and marketing department. We want to keep this as conversational as possible. So at any time when we're kind of throwing terms out there, please feel free to ask any questions. Just because when we were having a discussion about what we want this panel to look like, it was kind of hard to gauge what level you guys were at with your knowledge of sustainability and specifically fair trade. So I think the slide, yeah, right there. So I'm going to start and just talk a little bit about the New York City Fair Trade Coalition, because we're actually all members of the New York City Fair Trade Coalition. That's what's kind of brought us together here today. So I'm the chair, and the Fair Trade Coalition is a group of small business owners who are all working towards creating more fair trade within their brands, but we also have fair trade advocates. So fair trade advocates are those people who want to advocate for fair trade, but don't necessarily want to start their own business and don't necessarily have an organization behind them. So we get together about once a month at LIM College. And we have pretty interactive sessions. Right now we have a committee that's putting together a list of fair trade factories, so a directory. We have a committee that's doing social media work, so putting together campaigns to educate people on what fair trade is. And we have an events committee, because we really want to push and promote all of our business members' events. And throughout my journey, kind of as the chair, I first started as a member myself. I work with artisans in Uganda, so I've been going to Uganda for 10 years now, and I go each year for at least a month, and I work with artisans there. I've really found that there is such a need for a conversation around what fair trade fashion is, and as we see more sustainable practices coming about within the fashion industry, what does that mean? Sustainability is one of those words that we use all the time, and we know we can't be sustainable, right? We can only be more sustainable. So we try to have this conversation with our members and with the community and with the variety of schools that we're all affiliated with to really try to get people to question where their clothing came from and how it was made. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to let Priscilla introduce herself. And before I do that, I just kind of wanted to preface saying that the three of us here are providing extra services. We are providing small business owners with the tools to succeed, as opposed to being fashion designers ourselves or startup business owners who are kind of starting from scratch. We're really trying to work with already existing businesses to try to help them grow and be able to compete with the bigger players. So that's what kind of sets us apart from, I think, some of the other members within the Fair Trade Coalition. So Priscilla, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do?
Of course. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. I was very excited to come here. I've been living in New York for 13 years, and I was considering taking classes at FIT when I practiced law, which I was an attorney. I still am an attorney. For many, many years. Fashion has been a passion of mine since I was a child. I was born in France in a West African family from a culture that's very connected to working with people directly in making things. So we would go to the tailor and have our clothes made, kind of in front of us. You'd go to the market, you would see people weaving baskets, doing a lot of things with their hands. Manual work was respected, and it still is very respected. And so fair trade was not a term that I used, it was just trade. That's just the way it was, because we were on an equal footing with people making things. Long story short, I moved to New York. I worked helping businesses avoid problems, giving them advice. I also wanted to help women feel good about their choices, be more healthy. I'm also a mom, so it was like a whole journey that I took in understanding better what I was bringing into my life in terms of products, people, what I eat, how I dress. All these things happen, and at one point it became very important for me to have this sense of purpose of helping people make better choices for themselves, but also for the collective, for people around us. Having loved fashion forever, this is the path that I chose to effect that change. And so I founded this company called FAUBOURG. It's an online store for ethical fashion. We feature innovative and exciting brands for women who love to, look beautiful and feel good about the choices they make.
Great. Thank you. So Beth, tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. My name is Beth Fiteni, and I've been an environmentalist basically my whole life since I was a teenager. I started from just loving animals and going on to study environmental law, environmental policy, and I've always worked for nonprofit organizations. At the moment, my day job is working on clean energy for New York State, but I started Green Inside and Out as a nonprofit, basically to keep getting the word out about how people can make choices as individuals every day on how they can reduce toxins. So I actually brought a little pamphlet if anyone wants to take them. They're on the table there later. But it's, came from working on pesticide issues and plastics and the health issues associated with that, all these things. And so in one of the organizations that I worked for, Sustainability Institute at Malloy College out on Long Island, I would go out and give presentations. And having been aware of the issues with pesticide use on cotton, I started wearing organic cotton, which I'm of course wearing today. How could I come without that to FIT? And so I would say to people, you can buy organic cotton sheets and bamboo sheets, and they'd say, oh, can I touch it? What does it feel like? They were so fascinated. And I said, this was years ago before, now it's the, the trend. But back then I said, someone should write a book about this. So I was like, well, why not me? So in 2009, I started writing the Green Wardrobe Guide, and it's basically like a 101 about the different natural fabrics, organic cotton, hemp, bamboo, tencel, now there's algae and all these kind of things, which you guys probably already know about, but the average person in the public still doesn't really know. So I think my role, I have a radio show, which Andrea was on, I think my role is helping to create the consumer that wants to buy these things, that wants to, that appreciates the products that are being made fair trade and organic.
Thank you. So we have a lot of conversations about meeting our customers where they're at, and having a lot of conversations about us really being educators, whether we are working on our marketing plans or working on how we're going to help a business grow and evolve. How can we grow and evolve with our customer base and try to deepen that conversation? So I wanted to ask both of you, what does sustainability mean to you, and what sustainable practices do you bring into your business? Priscilla, if you want to start.
Sustainability, I think, is forward thinking. It's figuring out ways to meet the needs of the present without destroying or jeopardizing the needs of tomorrow. That can translate into making, choosing to buy organic products that are not going to deplete the soil of its natural ability to renew itself. It's also considering the effect that our actions are having on other people, other life, animal as well. So to me, sustainability is really enjoying today, but thinking about tomorrow and giving the ability for future generations to continue to grow and evolve, into like thriving individuals. So in our business, what do? I mean, we don't create a lot of waste to begin with. A lot of what we do is digital, first of all. We're online, so we're not in there, having a permanent store. Our packaging is 100% recycled. And in our daily lives, or whenever we have the opportunity, we also give hints to people as to how they can be more considerate, more conscious in how they live their lives. So it's a mindset, I think, that guides me personally and also the business.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thoughts that I have. Years ago, they used to call it cradle-to-cradle thinking. Like when you go out to buy anything, whatever you think, I need this, whatever you're going to buy, think about where it came from, who made it, what is it made of, and when you use it, like, is it using a lot of electricity, which will create greenhouse gases, and when it's disposed of, where does it go, where will it end up? And now it's more called the circular economy, where the inputs get circled around, become outputs, but then inputs again into something else. That same sort of concept. So, and this could be with our clothes, our food, our vehicles, everything. And my day job, as I mentioned, is working for New York State, and I don't claim to speak for the state, but just so you know, being that we live in this state, the government is trying to make some efforts to use recycled paper in the office, reduce waste, do a lot of energy efficiency initiatives. There's a greenhouse gas target, for example. In my office, we just did a little thing where we switched to the bottle-less cooler that doesn't have the plastic container. It's just the water comes through the system and then it's filtered. So little things like that in any business that can be done to create less waste and have less of an impact.
Which reminds me, when you mentioned the circular economy, and you're aware of that, we're actually part of very fun events to encourage people to avoid throwing things away, clothing away. So Andrea and I were going to be at an event on July 8th. If you want to see us again after this, I hope we didn't bore you to death yet. Where you can actually bring what you have here. You have a clothing swap, and we're doing that also on a massive scale. And we'll be there proposing sustainable, clothing to shop as well. But that's something we do, and we're calling talks with another company called Helpsy actually to install bins in our building to encourage, other tenants to dispose easily of things that they no longer want. I know it's been a personal pain point having to carry bags of things somewhere, and we just need to make it easy for people to do the right thing.
And just to add on top of that, I have a lot of conversations with my students or anyone that I'm mentoring and helping, whether it's starting a business. I ask, is this sustainable for you? Is this the lifestyle that you can continue to lead indefinitely? Because when I think of sustainability, I think of time. Is this something that can continue long term? And a lot of small business owners, a lot of students don't think of things that way. They can exhaust themselves. And a lot of times I say, you're not running a sprint. This is a marathon. Is my life sustainable? Running this small business, can I do it 10, 20, 15, whatever years from now? Because that's how long it takes to make a business successful. So we have had a lot of conversations about these buzzwords that we're hearing. So ethical fashion, sustainable fashion, fair trade fashion. Do they all mean the same thing? Are there differences? And I think we have different definitions and different opinions. For me personally, I see it more as a spectrum, and I think this is something that is growing and evolving and changing. And I'm always thinking to myself, okay, if sustainability is that buzzword right now, what's going to be the next buzzword? And I'm hoping it's fair trade, but it's one of those words that isn't so sexy, right? Fair trade. What do you guys think of when I say fair trade? Coffee and chocolate. Why is it so hard for you, everyone, even fashion designers, to think of fair trade fashion? Why is it so hard? And it's so difficult because there's so many different parts throughout the supply chain, right? So we think to ourselves, my company, Bernadette, if we're using upcycled fabric, which we do, we get our fabric from fab scrap or from leftovers from different companies, and I bring it to Uganda, and I'm paying them a fair wage, and they are making the clothing. Is it not considered fair trade because the fabric, I have no idea where it came from, right? I have no idea under what circumstances it was made. But no, it's still considered fair trade because, like I said, you can't be 100% fair trade. I mean, we're trying. You can only try and improve your supply chain and make it more ethical throughout the process. So I very much think of fair trade as something that we're slowly getting to. Our education on sustainability, on how our clothing is made, I think those certifications are going to become increasingly important. So Priscilla, I wanted to ask you, I guess I'll leave it open. What are your kind of differences you think between ethical, sustainable, and fair trade?
I think they all fall under the umbrella of ethical. I think you can definitely be ethical and sustainable, ethical and fair trade, and you can be sustainable but not fair trade from a social perspective, but sustainable from an environmental perspective. So it depends. I know that I completely agree with you with looking at it from a spectrum. And whether you're 100% sustainable or not, I don't think you can be 100% from the moment you start to take, from the moment you start to create something. Unless you're doing it out of thin air, you're probably taking something from somewhere, and you have to think about how it's going to renew itself, or what are you doing to minimize the negative impact of doing that. But ethical, I guess, is like a moral consideration, and I guess it depends on who is talking, who is looking at the situation. But objectively, it's hard to defend exploiting children, exploiting women, jeopardizing people's ability to live, to breathe fresh air. So all this is part of being, trading fairly with others. And sustainability, again, we're going back into this notion of our relationship with time. Are we doing things in a way that can continue? And fair trade comes into play in a way that I find interesting, which is the ability for indigenous populations to continue conveying traditional know-how. That is very important, so that the next generation is not looking at, oh, we need to emigrate, we need to go to other places to find opportunities, but rather look up to people in their communities to take after them, and to continue this know-how that may disappear if we don't celebrate and give them the opportunity to make a living out of that. So all these things they're not interchangeable, but they're definitely related terms that I want to see people asking questions about them, and we're happy to provide some guidance. But eventually, we just want to see, at least at FAUBOURG, we want to encourage designers to take a step in the better direction and doing more and more each season. And we've seen them do that because they also realize it's just a business opportunity today to act that way.
And we can even see things evolving. I've been to a few fair trade conferences, and even within the fair trade community, they're thinking to themselves, okay, fair trade is only the southern hemisphere. It can only exist in places that don't have access to developed marketplaces. But then within the United States, we know a lot of underserved populations, a lot of people who could definitely benefit from fair trade practices. A lot of times that we have such hard standards on sustainable fashion brands, yet the standards they want me to impose for the women that I work with, I can't even provide them for myself, right? Healthcare, I mean, clean water in this country, all these issues are issues that we're facing inequality globally, not just in places that don't have access to marketplace. So a lot of this kind of sustainable fashion movement is stemming from or growing from, I like to say, ex-disgruntled fashion professionals. Right here. I used to work in technical design, and I used to work for a big denim brand, and my story is not uncommon, moving away from these terrible practices, whether it was the factory collapsing in Rana Plaza that pushed a lot of people, the movie The True Cost, that has really woken a lot of people up, and we see this movement growing and growing. And I had an epiphany recently thinking that, you know, some point FIT or other schools are gonna come to this conclusion that they're approaching fashion from the wrong place, right? We go to fashion school and we think, oh, it's glamorous, it's fabulous, it's wonderful, we're so creative. And then you graduate and you end up working for the sweater department at Gap, right? And your biggest design decision is neckline up, neckline down, neckline up, neckline down, right? As opposed to looking at all the problems the fashion industry has. Imagine if freshmen came in and saw all the problems and we said, here are all the solutions, or here are all the problems that you can find solutions to, and that's a business that you can create. Or that's some new way that you can solve these problems and create more opportunities for people. So Beth, I wanted to kind of ask you, you having seen this sustainable fashion, this ethical fashion, and maybe just sustainability broadly, how have you seen it kind of grow and change, and what's your kind of prediction for where it's going?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so it's, again, like thinking about what happened at Rana Plaza, it was just so awful. And I think, you know, in order for sustainable fashion to become more mainstream. You know, years ago when I started wearing eco fashions, it was all looked like potato sacks. You know, it just was not fashionable. But now I'm seeing a lot more designers creating beautiful, fashionable items for both men and women. In fact, I have a section on eco fashion for men for the guys in here. But I think that there are three main things that need to happen to move things forward. One is education. And obviously that happens right here at FIT, at other schools like this, LIM, Parsons, to educate the student designers as they're up and coming, like Andrea said, and also to educate the public, like I was saying, getting the word out about why these things are important. You know, thinking about where your clothes are made of. And so the second part of that is transparency. You know, like with food, we have labels that tell you the calories or the amount of fat. But with clothes, you don't really know. It may say made in Bangladesh, but you might not realize, well, that means it's probably made in a sweatshop. So more transparency and also traceability from the side of the designers. I think there needs to be more of a way to track where did this material come from and how was it produced, because you know, you probably well know that the fabric can change hands many times before the final product actually reaches the market. So that's number two. And number three, I think what's also exciting is I'm seeing a lot of organizations forming coalitions. Like there's a Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and they're developing standards. Like there's the GOTS, the Global Organic Global Organic Textile Standard. Thank you. And you know that means it's not made in a sweatshop. It's totally organic, made without pesticides, and you know, it's produced by an organization, and then people can join, you know, to take the pledge to use these standards. There's the European one is called Ecotex. There's also the HIG index. So I see a lot more of that happening as well. So those are like three things that I think are making things move towards the right direction for the future.
I would also say that I'm noticing across a lot of different people, whether they care about fashion or not, everybody is becoming concerned about this issue. I'm seeing this conversation happening about plastic. This is something that a lot of people now understand, and we need to be there to also bring them further in the observation of that issue, because it doesn't just stop there. A lot of people are getting up now and saying we want to protect the oceans, we're going to stop single-use plastic. I think that's great. It's amazing. It's really, I'm like almost having goosebumps to like witness this awareness going on, but they need to continue and realize that, okay, now we need to also address the issue of microfibers, because it's contributing to the same problem. So from a retail perspective, the challenge is to bring the amount of information that's necessary, but at the same time we're selling fashion, so it shouldn't be too cumbersome. It should be something that eventually makes people happy and have them, help them have this emotional connection. So that's the whole exercise, and that's why it's important for us to have the opportunity to speak to them. A store is not necessarily going to do all that, but yeah.
And to speak to both of your points, there are some exciting tools that are coming out. I was just in this room a couple of weeks ago for training on virtual reality and augmented reality. So there's a lot of exciting things happening at FIT that are going to take people into the factory. So I'll be actually traveling to Ghana and then Uganda and bringing a 360 camera so I can bring back what it's like to work with these fashion designers and artists. And I'm really excited about what virtual reality has in store to build more empathy. And I think that's something that we should all be promoting all day, every day. And then also here we've had some lectures on blockchain. So blockchain is another way that we'll be able to provide that traceability. So those are exciting tools. Blockchain. So blockchain is a, well, cryptocurrency is,
You want to compete on a level that is not around the price, because if it's that, then we're bound to lose. So a lot of this depends on the consumer being awakened to realizing what's going on. When they don't understand how that t-shirt gets made for less than $10, it's very hard for them to understand why they're going to spend 5 times that amount on something seemingly, similar. So education is the key to compete, and connecting with human beings. We ran this story on social media a few months ago with one of our brands who makes beautiful bags out of Madagascar using traditional know-how over there, and that was hugely successful, because then they realized this is not a product, this has a story behind it, and that's how you compete against fast fashion, I think.
So just to add on top of that, it's been really interesting. I teach a retailing class, and to look at how fragmented the market is right now. And I mean that by saying no one of us in this room shops one way, right? We can look at food, but let's look at clothing for a minute. I go to clothing swaps all the time. Right? I consider myself, my goal is I'm a fashion disruptor. However I can disrupt the fashion at the moment, fast fashion, how can I take it down? And that is by not spending any money on my clothing, right? I could literally not spend any money on my clothing at this point. There's so much stuff in the world. I do a clothing swap once a month. Every person brings 10 items and leaves with 2. The problem for me is what to do with all this stuff. But what I decide to do is I will spend more money on fair trade items, maybe a jacket, maybe a purse, maybe shoes, and maybe it's one item. And then I'll do fair trade when I'm doing that, but then I'll go to Buffalo Exchange and I'll buy, that dress I need for a wedding secondhand, and then I'll do clothing swaps. So at this point, we have so much available to us, whether it is, shopping it online or in person or pop-ups. But I think it's just being aware that if you shop fast fashion, or if everything you buy is $10, you're not getting a deal. They're taking you for a ride, right? Because you're going to spend 10 times more maybe than I spend. You may have consistent new things all the time, but we know that stuff falls apart very quickly. So I think especially the younger generation is seeing that and is okay with shopping in many different formats for their variety of items. Another question? And a lot of people do that. A lot of people do that who have no money. And that's what it's being a conscious consumer about. Where is your priorities at? Do you have a question? There's a whole swap network out there. I'm pretty sure there is a clothing swap every single week in New York City at this point. One of my favorite hacks right now is a website called ThreadUp. So ThreadUp, you go online, you get a bag, they send it to you. It is postage paid for. Put all the clothing from my clothing swap, and I send it in, right? And then I get a couple of dollars off of it, right? Not a lot of money, but I haven't had to buy anything from ThreadUp. I'm kind of using it as a recycling system. And I'll get 10 pieces sent to me. I'll keep 2, 3, I'll send it back. I don't have to pay for any postage. And then sometimes I can score really high-end things. They'll have things that are originally $600 for $150. That it is still expensive, $150, but you're getting a quality of a 600 plus item that I hope is gonna last me a long time.
You should come see us on July 8th. There's going to be a massive swap event in Brooklyn Mirage.
Where is it located at?
Brooklyn Mirage is in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn Mirage. It's a whole
You
all-day
got it.
thing.
And it's going to be fun.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And that's why you have to learn more about the companies that you're investing in. For instance, I have Chaco sandals, and my Chaco sandals, they just broke, and they have a repair center. So I paid $40 to go get it repaired, but those Chacos are gonna last me another 10 years. Same with Patagonia. You know, I think companies are really being pushed to have better programs that buy back their items. Eileen Fisher buys back any Eileen Fisher item, and they're receiving 2,000 pieces every week from their customers. And still, that's not very cheap. You can go up to Eileen Fisher in Irvington. They have their Renew store. It's all secondhand Eileen Fisher, and shirts are still $70. But it will last you. Some of those shirts are 30 years old. And they can tell by the tags how old they are. So there are companies that really stand behind their product. Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier that I wasn't familiar with, microfibers.
Do you want to talk about that, Beth?
Sure.
Sad story.
So microfibers result from like basically the little tiny threads from polyester. And polyester is made of plastic, which is made from oil. So it's petrochemical based. And they're so tiny that when you wash like your fleece jacket in the laundry and it goes out through the sewage treatment plant, they're so tiny they pass through the sewage treatment plant and go out into the ocean. And then the tiny little fish think they're food and eat them.
I hate to say this, don't eat fish. Right now, it is not about, they're saying how, is it safe to ingest plastic? But they're saying how much plastic can we ingest where it is harmful for us? So there's so much plastic in fish now that it's getting into our bodies. And I just saw something and they were talking about how sea salt has been contaminated by this too. Sorry. I warned you in the beginning we were not gonna be as fun.
The thing that's difficult is that this once you start learning about this, it's like this rabbit hole, and it just shows you the extent of knowledge that you don't have, and it can be depressing, to be honest, when you realize that you seem to be screwed no matter how way you're looking at it.
Well, one thing that gets us is as soon as we find something out, like for a moment I was like, bamboo fabric, awesome, I'm gonna have everything bamboo fabric. And then you're like, oh shit, there's all these chemicals that it takes to process the bamboo to make fabric. Okay, so no bamboo fabric. But a lot of interesting things are happening as far as whether it's packaging, like they're making biodegradable packaging out of algae, or whether they're having algae or bacteria that can actually eat plastic, or they're growing fabric. I know at FIT, right, we're using kombucha to grow different materials. So it's such an interesting time for textiles and all these innovations. What I think is daunting for us is when we realize how much stuff is on this planet that we have to deal with, that we're still turning out. I think, all of your onesies are somewhere on this planet. And that keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Like we were talking earlier about, like, I'm vegetarian, so a lot of my circles are vegan. So we try to use things like Piñatex, which is made of the pineapple skin instead of leather, or now there's muskin that's made from mushroom skin. I even recently saw shoes made of apple skin. It's just amazing, but it probably still takes chemicals, so nothing is perfect, like you said. But it's so cool that there are these alternatives, because otherwise we're buying more plastic shoes, which is also not good. So it's always a trade-off.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I don't know if there's an answer to this, but for instance, I shop almost exclusively secondhand. Are there questions I should be asking of places like Buffalo Exchange, Beacon, Closet, Goodwill, to know if that's a good place to be bringing my clothes to and buying from?
Yes. It's not so much, or yes, on a number of levels. For instance, what are the ethics of the company? So for instance, Goodwill is for profit. So they're just getting free clothing from us. And a lot of times they send it to markets such as Uganda, and they kill their industry. So all in Uganda, there's really no new clothing unless it's like custom African print clothing, because there's just such a flood of secondhand goods. But then we can look at the Salvation Army. A lot of people take issue with the Salvation Army because they are not supportive of homosexuals. So we can look at that and say, no, we can't support them. I think we have to dig deeper into the companies, and we have to, somebody once said to me, follow your true north. So for me, I'm not vegan. I am okay with using leather because I find it sustainable. We consume so much beef, it's unsustainable not to do something with the leather, right? Catch 22. You know,
And
somebody
also
else
leather
will have,
lasts a long time.
leather lasts a long time. I will not buy new fur, and I won't buy faux fur because faux fur is plastic, but I will buy vintage fur. So you have to kind of figure out what you're comfortable with, where your ethics lie. And I think taking on something new, adding to that list of ethics every 6 months, every 3 months, whatever it may be. I was so happy today with your straws because I gave up straws this year. And I've been walking around with my Starbucks iced coffee trying not to spill it all over myself. So it's little things like that in the beginning take effort, but now I haven't had paper towels in my house in years. I can't even remember the last time. So once you get used to those things, then it just becomes habit.
I think this whole movement makes us question what progress means. You know, does it mean constantly doing things in a new way, or is there something that's been going on for years and centuries that actually was the better way? You know. That would be my
And I think
my
we have
conclusion.
to end it there. Thank you very much.